Okay, I have a 2007 Pontiac Vibe here, and we're going to be replacing the transmission in this. It will still go through the other gears, but it has no reverse, and it's starting to try to slip even in drive at this point. I already have a replacement for it, and I've got it set off over here for now. And we're just going to be, this one here's got about 90,000 miles on it. The car itself has 148,000, but the transmission's gone. It runs really good except for the transmission. So we're going to go ahead, and the way I'm going to be doing it is just pulling the engine and everything out. You could do it by leaving the engine in, but I usually never do it that way. And usually when I got the engine out, I can do a few things to it and put some gaskets on it, etc. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So what I like to do is just get the vehicle lifted up pretty good, and we'll get it some blocks or jack stands in the front, and we'll just start working on popping the wheels off and the CV axles and everything, and then we just kind of go from there. Okay, so this is where I'm lifting each side, and I've just got a jack stand here, and I got one on the other side. I'm going to put some blocks back here just as another precaution as well. But now we're going to go ahead and work on getting the wheels off. Okay, so these little plastic caps are 21 millimeters. We're just going to loosen them off all the way, and then we'll just take this cover right off, and we can get to the lugs beneath. Okay, so now we can just set the cover aside, and I'm going to be using my impact wrench for all this stuff here. Okay, the way these axle nuts work is you have to get a punch in here because they're crimped into this slot, so you have to take a punch and just hit in that area right there with a hammer, and it will knock that divot right back out, and you'll be able to go ahead and get your 30 millimeter. It's a 12-sided socket, and we'll take that off with the impact as well. Okay, let's say you need the 30 millimeter. Should look like that. And we're just doing, so far I'm just doing the same thing to both sides. Okay, now with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and get back here and get on 17 millimeter here, and we're going to get on this 17 millimeter right there, and you can rotate this wheel if you like to give yourself, you can turn it to the left to give yourself room to get back there a lot easier. And also we're going to be taking and wiring this up to here out of the way. Okay, so I got these loose, 17 millimeters. I'm just going ahead and taking these completely out. And this will remove this whole bracket. Now I'm going to leave that bottom one a second. I'm going to go ahead and take some wire, run it through here, and we'll just loop this around so we can take and tie this up to that spring up there. Okay, so we just wired that up there completely out of the way. Go ahead and remove this rotor, set it out of the way. Now we're going to go ahead and get on. We've got, these are 22 millimeters. We're going to remove it from the nut side here, and then we'll just remove the bolt. Okay, and these are very tight. These are like 162 foot-pounds, so they're not going to come loose easily. You'll definitely want an impact for this. These will just push right through, no problem. Okay, now this will just wiggle down. It'll give me room to actually push this CV axle back out here. Okay, and I also just put my bolts back where they went there for now. like I said, this is ready. This CV axle is ready to come out, and it does help if you move the wheel knuckle a little bit. Okay, now so far up until this point, I've pretty much done everything the same way on both sides. I'm doing the exact same thing to the other side. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to popping this CV axle out on the driver's side, and then we will move on to the other side. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my big crowbar and I'm going to feed it up into here, and we're going to pop the CV axle out. Let's see, I think I turned it the wrong way. And here we are. Now, you want it setting about right there, right at below that bracket you see there, and get right on the lip of that CV axle. And there we go. Just give it a good couple pops and it should come loose. So now we can take this back out. And we should be completely loose. And it does help sometimes to have this plastic shrouds out of the way. Okay, so there is that one. That is your driver's side CV axle, and that's all it holds it is this little special C-clip. It's on this end, and we don't have any drippage coming out, so that's good. So now we're just going to move on to the passenger side. Okay, and the passenger side is pretty well the same, except it's longer, and for this one we're actually going to have to get underneath the car. So we're going to come under the center of the car, and this is why you like to have your vehicle up a little bit, so you can at least get in here and have room to do something. I'm going to take the crowbar, and this time we're going to use this end, except this end is, this side is going to face me, and we're going to go right up into here and get right behind this part of the CV axle, and you can see how it's just going to hit right against that right there, and we're just going to give that a pull. It's pushing against the transmission, and then we're pushing against the CV axle here, and it doesn't take much. This side's not near as hard as the other side, so we just rock it. Okay, and it's coming, and there we have it. Hopefully we don't have any fluid coming out of this side, or we're going to have to get the pan. Okay, so I like just a little bit more having it here, looks like. Alright, so there is that one. Just careful with your boots. And we're just going to work it out through here. Coming right out through here. I'm just going to come right out of this end right here, and then we'll set this off over here. Okay, and here's a view of this one. You can see how it's longer, has the same clip that holds it into the transmission there. It's just a little bit longer compared to the other one. And here they are side by side. You can see how much longer that one is. So okay, so now we got those out of the way, we can move on to our engine. We'll start disconnecting and draining fluids and stuff at this point. And like I said, we're going to be coming out the top. And you can see we got a lot of room to work with in here. We're going to have no problem. At the very most, I see maybe taking out this radiator, but we got a lot of room to work with in here. And this thing, you have to wash these to get these clean. I had to take and I did not want to work on this thing filthy, and I took it to the car wash and I really sprayed this thing down good. So that's why it looks so clean right now. So I said anyway, I'm going to start draining the coolant out first, and we'll see about getting the transmission fluid drain. Okay, I'm taking this plastic flap. There's two, or at least there's just two of them. There's probably three at one time, but taking these 10 millimeters anyway. Come under here, there's a couple of these pop rivets. Just pop these things out of the way, and that will just, the whole thing will just come down. You can actually get down. We're going to need these out of the way to get the stuff. So they got this in zip tied over here. We'll have to cut those loose because we've got lots of connectors and everything that we'll have to deal with here. Okay, so we got our clean pan here for the coolant. With that flap out of the way, we can easily see our plug right here. We're just going to start draining this coolant. And if it's not bad, a lot of times I'll just reuse it, just filter it back through. Just depends on what it looks like, how dirty it is. So we'll go ahead and get the cap off here. So we'll just let that drain for now. And you can just as easily reach that from the top as well, just reaching down here to loosen it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and disconnect this battery. Okay, so I'm just removing this hold down for the battery, so we can go ahead and lift this thing out of here and out of the way. Okay, and now at this point I'm just going to work on taking a lot of connectors loose, and we're just going to be labeling them and everything, so get everything back together where it's supposed to be. And we're going to start taking this air box off here. We've got a connector right here. We're going to loosen that up. Okay, at this point I was just taking this air box off. Just has a couple clips. It holds the top on, and then you remove the filter, and you've got three of these 10 millimeters. We're going to take those out. I've went ahead and labeled a couple of wires that I've got here that I took loose from up here on the inlet duct and stuff. Okay, you'll pop this end off of that duct, and there'll be a few connections here that you'll need to just bend those tabs and stuff so this wire will come loose. Also going to take this ground, we're going to mark and label that, so make sure to put that back. Okay, the next thing, we took the cover off the fuse box. We got this wire that you see is running over here. This has to lift up, and these connectors are clipped in, so we need to pull each one. You just press and pull each one of these out of here. Okay, so we marked a few of those, so that just lifts up, straight up, pull it out of there. And now we're just going to leave this together. We're going to come over here and get this ground, 10 millimeter. Okay, so this clip, you just push this and it lifts off of this transmission mount. So now we've got all this here free. We can just fold it back over this way so we know we got that disconnected. And to clear up room, I'm going to go ahead and remove the bracket. It's for the battery box here. Okay, back here behind the master cylinder, we're going to go ahead and disconnect this hose right here and just push it off. Okay, and back here is the fuel line. This thing slips off this clip. And if you haven't got the pressure off, at least put a rag or something over this before you go to disconnecting it. Okay, and I can show you, you just squeeze both sides of the yellow tab there and it lifts it straight up and off of there. Now we're going to go on to, since we're on this side, we're going to go on to disconnecting our heater hoses that are right back here. It looks like we've got a vacuum line. We'll go ahead and get this vacuum line here first as well. Okay, so I just removed those heater hoses and labeled the one that was the top. You're going to need a pry bar. They're pretty stuck on there. Once you just kind of pry on it a little bit, then you can get down there and twist it and they'll come right off. Okay, now I'm just going to move over to this side. I know I'm going to be needing to get the power steering pump off of here, and I'm going to need to get the air compressor drop down. So I'm going to go ahead and go in and get the shroud off and work on getting the belt. So we got this shroud. It's got some 10 millimeters over here. You got 1, 2, and then you got a couple of clips and stuff up under the front. And this in here's been zip tied. So we're going to remove this and then we'll move on. Okay, so there's the tensioner is right here, and I got on that part right there with the 3/4 and went towards the front of the vehicle and popped the belt off right here. That's how I done that. I went ahead and took this loose. That's got a couple of 10 millimeters for this power steering, and I popped the connector out through the side. You come in here, there's like a connector that's coming through here, and I popped that loose so that would be out of the way. So now that I got the belt off, I'm going to get under here and work on getting the AC compressor up here first. See how much. We're just going to take it loose and just let it kind of like hang down. Okay, I got ahead of myself. Before I take the compressor, I'm actually going to take this radiator out of here. Now I've already got the lower hose loose, we got the upper hose loose, and we're going to go ahead and get under there. You see these lines here running underneath. We're just going to get under here, get a little pan to catch the transmission fluid. We're just going to take these connectors loose right here, and then we'll go ahead and work up top there and try to pull this out of here. Okay, so I've got those lower transmission hoses. They're down there dripping. I just took and unfastened this wire's got a couple of clips, and then disconnected it from the fan, set it off over here. So now we're gonna get up here on these and take this loose. I think those are 12s. Okay, so I just put those back on there so I'm not losing them. So now we're ready to go ahead and let's see, I think we might, yeah, I think we're loose. Okay, so there's still a couple of 10 millimeters right down here holding these transmission lines that I have to remove. We'll just put these bolts right back where they go so we don't lose any. This is the only thing holding it. Okay, so I just pulled the radiator and fan out, and it's freed up a lot more room. We can get to some stuff here. So now we got some 12 millimeters. We got 2 down here on the bottom. We got 1 right here on the top. We can easily get to those, and we're just gonna, like I said, we'll just let this hang or put a bungee cord on it, but it'll be okay. Okay, right here is a connector for the air compressor that I took loose. I don't know if I mentioned that, but we've got it loose, and so it's setting down here right now out of the way. So I've got, other than the mounts and stuff, we've got most everything we need, but I'm gonna have to get back here to this power steering pump. Unless I want to, disconnect the lines, I'd rather try to get back here and just disconnect the pump itself and just leave it hanging just like the compressor. That way I don't have to lose any fluid and mess with any of that, getting air in that. So I'm going to get back there now and work on that. We've got the main harness running in through here that we're going to have to deal with here too. Okay, so I'm over here working on this power steering pump, and there's a couple of bolts. There's you can see the threaded bolt coming through. There's a 14 millimeter nut there, and there's one up a little bit higher than that. I don't know if you can see that right there. So I've took those nuts off of there, and now I'm just going to work on sliding those out. Now that I got them loose, they should, so I can push the top one back. But anyways, if you get back here underneath, you can pull it, and there is that bolt. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to pull it out from the back. I said you could get underneath here, and you can see if you come to the back side here, where they're running through, and we got one at the top that I just took out, and then we got this one right here, and I've got the nut off, so at this point it's just sitting there, and I'll just have to wiggle it and push that bolt back through, and then we'll leave everything connected to the power steering pump with these 2 bolts off, and we'll just kind of move this out of the way without having to disturb any of this. So I'm going to just work on getting this bolt pushed out. Okay, and all I did was got behind this with my little orange handle pry bar and pried it out from there, and you can see it's dangling loose now, and we got that taken care of. Now I think while we're down here, we're going to go ahead and get on our exhaust. You can see we've got a couple of bolts here, and then one on the other side. We're going to go ahead and take that loose so we can free our exhaust up. And of course we'll have to get back here behind it, and I believe these 2 are going to be 14 millimeters, but I'm not for sure. We'll find out here in a second. Okay, so we're just back here getting these bolts out. We got 2 of those. Just using like a 1-foot extension and a 14 millimeter. And now we've got the exhaust loose here. Okay, now I'm back up top here. We're going to work on getting this wire harness loose. I've got a 10 millimeter bolt right there. I'm going to take that loose with that clamp first. Okay, so on the inside, the passenger side, I just took the glove box out. You just push them in, it drops down, and then there's this little piece here, and you just pull that out of there, and then we can get in here and see The actual connector is going through back up in there, but we got to disconnect these connectors right here from the computer, and we're just going to go through here and label each of these. They just have little push tabs. Just push that right there and then pull the connector off, but they won't come off real easily. Okay, there's a couple of connectors up here that have to come down. This has to come out of this little harness. Now you can see that this is loose. These here don't pull through, but this is the part we need loose. And now we've got to get up in there and work this thing through. Okay, so I've just come out here to the firewall and I've pulled this little weather boot through. Okay, so you can see this boot, it's a weather boot, and you just give it a pull, and we've got it loose at this point, and we can start just working this wire back through here from working inside and out, just to make sure that it's not going to hang up. Okay, so there's that pulled through there now. So we're just going to do a kind of a double check around to make sure. We should be able to go ahead and start popping the motor mounts off. We will have the the shifting cable. We'll need to go ahead and remove that, and pay close attention to how this is routed and make sure that you put it back right. You can see how it routes right through here and clamps on to that transmission. And it runs down. Oh, I just pulled that off, but that's okay. It runs down under these hoses. It's got a clip place that it clips into right here. So when we put this back, it's got another one right there as well. You can see we want to make sure that we get that just back like that, because messing with this can cause problems. And then it just runs right under down there to the firewall. You can see right down in there. So we're going to go ahead and disconnect that, and then I think I'm going to get my lift over here and see about getting connected. I've got a lift point back here on the back. We'll have to rig something up on the front. So that's going to be the next thing. We're just going to go ahead and disconnect. We got a clip here. We just need to pull this clip back. It's really stubborn. You have to get a screwdriver or something. And then we're going to pop this off. There's a little clip on the underside of that. It's not a big deal. And that comes right off. So that's all there is to that. And then we'll be able to have this completely loose. Okay, this cable's got a little clip. Just pull that off with a screwdriver and it'll pop right off. It's like that. And we got the clip removed from here, and this should, with that loose, just pull right straight off of there, and it'll be connected in a couple there's places right there, just push those off, and then that's completely loose. So we got to pull this out. So I'm going to go ahead and get my lift, and we're going to get hooked up to the engine here, and then we'll start taking the motor mounts. Okay, so I've just hooked on to the bolt. I used a different bolt that was smaller than the alternator bolt and just went through because I couldn't find one that was the right length to go in there. And I just put my chain there, and then I hooked it to this hook right back over here. Okay, so I've got it rigged up here, and you can see that hook comes in nice and handy. So now I'm going to go ahead and start working. I think I'm going to work on these center mounts here first, and then we'll work on getting the transmission and then get the front mount. But I've got the cherry picker holding it. We've got everything loose here. So at this point we're ready to go ahead and start lifting it up. Okay, so I've got the front mount loose. There's just a bolt or a nut. Just took the nut off this side, pulled the bolt through. Working on the rear one, you're going to need a long assortment of extensions, at least about this long. You know, about 2.5, 3 foot, and you'll need a 17 millimeter. And you're going to go right in through here and get to that 17 millimeter bolt on that mount right there. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and get this mount in the front of the engine. I'm going to be taking the center bolt, and I'm going to be taking the bolts that are actually holding. There's 3 of them all together, so you can see them there. So we need to get to all 3 of these, and we'll take this bolt out, and basically we'll be able to remove this part, and we'll leave this on here. I don't think this part's going to get in the way. Okay, so I got all the bolts loose. I can't just pull it off there just yet. I'll have to wait till I lift it up here to slip it out. But we're going to move over here to the transmission. We're going to go ahead and take this one out, and I think we have to also hold the one on the back, and these are 14s as well. So we're going to go ahead and get this one here out, and I'm trying to think if this is going to get in my way. We may have to go ahead and pop this whole entire thing off. So, because it looks like to me it's going to hang up. So I think what we're going to do is we're first going to take this one out, and we'll let this drop down a bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and work on getting these other brackets off and getting this one here off out of the way, because I've got bolts in behind here. It'll be easier with the transmission drop down. Okay, to remove this one, you got 2 bolts here, and you got a bolt here, which you have to use a wrench for these, and then you can lift that one completely up and out of your way, and just put your bolts so you don't lose them. And I think that we can leave this for now. It's not going to be a problem. And we've got everything. Also, I put a jack right under here just to kind of keep that end from dropping down while I was removing this mount, because I can see how I'm kind of to one side, got more weight over here, so I'm just going to keep that jack there for momentarily. Okay, I did have a connector on my power steering pump. It's got like this little boot, and then you just push down right there and it'll just pop right off. But usually, I mean, when you just go slowly, you can find, if you did happen to leave something, we can find it here. It looks like everything else is pretty well freed up. I'm trying to hang up over here a little bit. I think I might get under here, completely remove that one from the bottom, because it's just kind of in the way and it's making my transmission cock sideways, making it a little bit more difficult. So I'm going to just get under there and just take that off. Okay, so I just got underneath and took that. There's some 14mm bolts holding that, and just wiggled it completely out of there because it was kind of getting in a bind, making things a little bit more difficult. Okay, so I wound up taking the transmission bracket over here off. It was trying to hang up on some stuff over here, so I took that completely off. We're loose now. We're coming out at this angle. It's just the way that it worked out. But everything is loose. We've got coming up like this. We've got the exhaust clearing, and we got to make sure we get our cable. It's loose, but it's still on there. We don't want that to hang up. So this is how I'm doing it. And I've got actually an air pump on this one. If this definitely makes things a lot easier as far as making things quicker. So I'm going to have to go ahead and raise this hood up some more. It's not going to be near high enough. I'm going to get that prop out from there and raise it up some more before I can come on up here. Like I said, just take your time. Be careful. Make sure you don't have anything hung up, because it's going to cause you a lot more trouble breaking stuff than taking your time. So it's about ready to come out. Just got to get this hood up a little higher, and we're just going to keep lifting it up. The way that I've got mine rigged up, I was running into a problem where I was going to hit the hood here, and thought I was going to take the hood off, but I simply loosened the bolts up on both sides and made sure they were plenty loose, and that's going to give me enough slack to be able to push it back now. And I'll put something here to protect, just in case it tries to hit my fender. Okay, and we just about got it free here. I put a little piece of cardboard up there to keep it from scraping the hood. And we're still clearing. I'm having to watch this piece for this bracket up here. But I've cleared the exhaust already. I've got plenty of room. I could move back if I need be at this point. So really there's plenty of room here. Right, we're almost clear. Still got the cardboard up there to keep it from scratching up the front of the hood. Let's see, we only like a little bit here, just clearing the front. You can see how kind of high up you got to get this thing, depending on how tight you got your chain anyway. But we're almost out here. We're going to go ahead and lift it on up a little more and get it back here and get it set down on the garage. Okay, so here she is out, and here's a view with the engine completely out. See, I left the power steering. We left the AC compressor. Just set those aside. Disconnected at the exhaust there. Pulled our wire harness through. Left our shifter cable. So then just a few other attachments and stuff, not that big of a deal. Took the radiator out. Got our mounts. So it gives you a good look at it. And we're just going to be swapping this over here. And you can see that I've already got now I done the filter last night. There's nothing to it. There's 3 bolts holding your filter on. just get you. They got them in any part store. Just pop your new one on, bolt it down 10 millimeters, and went ahead and used some gray RTV, and I just put a good bead. I used almost a whole tube of it, and all I do, finger tighten them down and let it set for like 24 hours before I put fluid in it. And well, 24 hours before I finish torquing it down, and these things won't leak. You know, that's why I like it. I use the gaskets, they leak. I use this stuff and I don't ever have any leaks. So we'll have to also transfer some stuff over. This one has bent lines and stuff like that. Not a big deal. We'll just transfer them over. But other than that, so we got our filter in, so we're pretty much ready to go. And this thing, you notice it's got a little corrosion on it. That's because it comes from up north, and it doesn't have but like 90,000 miles on it, but it's got a lot of corrosion and stuff from the salt. So anyways, we're going to go ahead. Also, I've got some CV axle seals, and they're different from passenger to driver side, so you don't want to mix those up. Whatever, they're usually, these look pretty close to the same, to tell you the truth, but usually they're a little bit different on the shafts, so they usually only go on one side, so we have to make sure you get the right side on there. But definitely, if you're doing a transmission, put you some new CV axle seals. These seals here, just not worth it to take a risk. Okay, so I've got my seals here, got them marked. The left for the drivers and the right and the passengers, and what we're looking at right here with this one is our passenger side. We're just going to pop that out there. Usually I can just take a screwdriver. Just be careful, do not gouge anywhere near the side of your where your seal's going into, or you'll have problems. But usually I can take and do this and get it off of there. Okay, so there's that one, and this is the replacement transmission, but those are in pretty bad shape. And that's the spring. We'll just take and wipe that out, clean that up a little bit before popping this one in. This is our passenger. And we can do a comparison if we want to just see how closely it matches here. Look pretty much identical. Yeah, we'll just take and wipe that out, and we'll just push that. Usually it doesn't take much to push it back in there. Very easy when the transmission's out. Okay, and you can get a good view in here where those, you see how the CV axle goes in there and gets into those teeth there, and then there's like a stop there. Well, it only goes so far. It can't go any farther. It's like a bar that goes through there. So we got that cleaned out a little bit. We're just going to push this in here. I'm not going to put anything on there. And usually, like I say, they're pretty snug, but usually you can just push these in. So they're really tough when they're in the vehicle and you're having to reach in there and try to get to it to do it. Okay, so we got that knocked down flush. So we'll just want to put some clean transmission fluid around this before we slip our CVs back in. And we're just going to stick something in there now to keep junk and trash out of there. But I was just using a little hammer and a block of wood to knock that one in. So we're going to flip it over. We'll get to the other one here in a minute. I think right now, while I've got it flipped this way, I'm going to work on getting some of these hoses here be transferred over that are broken. Work on getting some of this stuff here loose because I'm going to need to do that. You can see these are bent, so I got to get them off the other one. Okay, so I swapped over my good transmission lines to that one, and now I'm getting ready to go ahead and unbolt the transmission from the engine. And just took the wires and stuff that were connected and took those loose and unclipped them out of their connectors. And now we've got some bolts running all the way around. We've got here for the starter, and we've got some big bolts that we got to get from back here and here, and we'll just get started with a long extension. Okay, so I'm working on getting these flywheel bolts, the torque converter bolts loose here. I've got one. These are 12 millimeters. They're pretty tight. There's going to be 6 of them. You can see them through the starter, but you can't quite get to them from there. So you got to take this little plastic, pop that off with a screwdriver, and get down here on the bottom holding this over here from turning with a 3/4, and I'm just using a small 12 millimeter ratchet. But like I said, they're pretty snug, so you have to work with them. I just got the first one. I'm going to rotate it, and we're going to get the other 6 here. Okay, so I got the torque converter bolts out, all 6 of those, and then I got 2 bolts down here on the bottom. I got one here, got one on the other side. I already took the 2 holding the starter out. Had one coming in this way and then one coming through the back. And we've got a couple up here, some bigger ones, and then we've got 2 more over here to the side, right here. And that should be about it. So we're going to go ahead and remove those and then carefully separate this and just make sure that the torque converter doesn't pull out, because then you have a big mess and fluid going everywhere. Okay, so we're getting it separated here. We're just carefully, and I was pushing, going into the starter and pushing that torque converter back, because I do not want it to be pulling out of there. So just carefully pushing this thing off of here. And we want to also make sure we got our motor supported, because this transmission, everything's kind of holding it. So I've got blocks on the other side, and I'm going to go ahead and put some blocks over here just in case it tries to shift, because it's kind of top heavy. Okay, here we got the old transmission out of the way, sitting over here, and we're fixing to get the replacement and slide it into place here. One thing to make sure of is that you have your alignment dowels. Those 3/8 alignment dowels are in place. And another thing, when you get a replacement, you need to check for is that they don't have one stuck onto the transmission side, or you got any missing. I'm going to have to take this one here out, it looks like. Okay, so it's a good idea to take an ordinary file and just lay it across this and just run it around and make sure you don't have any nicks or bumps or anything sticking up. And it's also not a bad idea to take and clean your threads out. You know, this comes from a salvage yard. It could have dirt or whatever, and even take your bolts and make sure they're even going to thread in there properly. Okay, so we're just working the replacement into place here. It really slides around pretty easy on cardboard. And so I just checked out all the threads and everything, make sure everything's going to work out right. Now another thing that you want to do when putting this together is try to get your flywheel and this lined up where it's going to be lined up with your flywheel, so you don't have to get in there and move that around a whole lot. A little bit more difficult to move after you get it into place. So anyway, I said I've just got it on cardboard here and we're just sliding it around. I'm just kind of pushing the cables and stuff back into place here. And really pretty simple. I put a little bit of spray silicone on that, so that would go into place, and the same thing on those alignment pins that we have up here. So they should slide right into place. So I'm going to just wiggle it around, and like I said, I can move this engine and tilt it as well to kind of get it into place. Pretty simple to get it into place out here on the ground. Okay, so we've got it kind of wiggled up there pretty close. We're going to start working some bolts in here. And let's see, we've got it on the dowel pins there, so we're just going to work some bolts in to kind of hold it in place so it's not moving again. Okay, so I've just been over here putting these bolts into the torque converter. I've been using some high strength Loctite, and what you have to do is just snug these down a little bit as you're doing this, and you'll back it off a little bit, because if you don't, in other words, if you just tighten the first one down, you're not going to be able to get the other one started into place, and they're a little bit tricky. Okay, so I'm just using this little bitty micro ratchet. It's working good for getting up in here and getting this 12 millimeter, because it doesn't take a lot to snug these down. And I, blowed the threads out on the torque converter and cleaned those out a little bit before I did this, because they had a lot of rust. Luckily didn't have to run a tap through any of them, but they were rusty, and I had to run some WD-40 and then run the bolts down through each and every one of them. So there's the final one. I've just snugged it down, and I'm going to come back and torque them. I'm going to go around and snug all the rest of them down. I'm going to get the final torque on them here. Okay, with all those in, we're going to be going in here and torquing these little 1/4-inch bolts to 25 foot-pounds. And as far as these go, the smaller ones going into the transmission or engine, whichever side, I'm going to go 35 on the smaller ones, and we're going to go 45 on the larger bolts that were up top there. Okay, so I got the transmission torqued down. I've been over here working on putting some connectors and brackets back where they go, and putting all my lines and stuff on, and just kind of double checking everything here and making sure I got all my grounds and everything hooked up before I go into the car. Got my clip on my wire harness back there, so everything's torqued and everything is hooked up. I was just getting ready to put on this CV axle seal, and these are way different from one side to the other, so you can definitely tell the difference. They're nowhere the same. So I'm just getting ready to knock this in, and I think I'm going to go ahead and and put some intake gaskets on this while I've got it out. Okay, so I was getting ready to replace these intake gaskets. I can't see, it'd be really hard to do this in a vehicle for sure. But out here, I've got a lot of hoses connected here, but I don't need to take any of this loose. I've just kind of pulled it back here. There's a couple stud bolts, there's 3 bolts going through here, and then there was one right down here. And I just slipped it right up and over the top of the dipstick. These were connected to the stud bolts, and I just pushed them up for the wire harness. And now I'm just getting ready to slip this old gasket off here, and it's got a tab, I believe, down here that you can grab a hold of. Maybe. Let me get a screwdriver. It's just stuck. Okay, so there's the old one off, and it's really glued on there. I had to use a little pick tool to dig it off. So I'm going to clean this up a bit and then slap the new one on. Okay, so I got this cleaned up, and we got the gasket on here. It's always amazing the difference. I mean, the one on there was flat. This actually sticks out a good, 16th or 1/8 of an inch there. And it's got these little tabs that locate, just pop it right on there. So I'm ready to go back on. I'm going to slip it right back over the dipstick there, and we're going to get it back into place and bolt it down. I said, definitely, if you got your engine out, you want to at least do some intakes. These things are very difficult to do in a car, and these things are really cheap. It's a good time to do it. Okay, so we're getting ready to go back into the car here, and this is a better look at this, how I rigged this up around the starter. I've just got a bolt that'll go through and a nut on the back side there, and a washer on that, and of course it hooks to its hook right there. And it's got just the right tilt, and we're going to go ahead and just start going up, and just like we came out. And then we'll worry about getting the mounts on after we get in here. These bolts out of the way. So we're just going to lift it up here now and going in. Okay, so here we have it up, clearing the vehicle. Got my cardboard back into place there. And we're getting ready to go ahead and ease it down in here very carefully. Like I say, these air operated cylinders are so much easier. Like, I wish I'd gotten one a long time ago. Definitely worth buying. Okay, so as you're working this down in here, you just have to, as the boom lowers, it's going to go back more, so you just have to lower it a little bit, scoot your lift back some, and you can see I've got like an inch of clearance through there with that exhaust on there, plenty of room, and still got clearance up here, just going slow and watching stuff. Don't want to break anything. And I'm getting kind of close over on this side, so I'm going to have to push the lift and go that way towards the passenger side a little bit. So because this is at an angle, the trickiest part is getting it on this rear mount down here. And once I get it lined up with that, I'll pretty much be home free, and then I'll work on getting these other mounts on. I got another jack under here just kind of holding this in from tilting and leveling it out. Okay, so I had to start this first mount first because the back was trying to tilt too much, and now I'm just going to line this back up. I'm going to start lowering it down. Like I said, I'm using my jack and my lift to kind of level this thing out a little bit. So So we're just getting ready to lower it down onto that back one. And remember, we got to come through here to be able to get the bolt in, and it has a welded on nut on the back side of that bracket. Okay, so I was incorrect. The sequence of your mounts: tighten this front and the back transmission mount before you do these here, because they're the center mounts, because it's way more difficult to try to do the center mounts first. So I've just tightened up my mounts, and I'm getting ready. I think the next thing I'm going to do is put my AC compressor and my power steering pump back on. I already fed my main harness back through the firewall there, but I don't have it connected in there yet. So I'm going to go ahead and get, like I said, the AC compressor and power steering pump here now. Okay, so I've just got the air compressor and got back here, and I got the power steering. There it is. And I got the belt on, and I'm just getting ready now. So I've hooked up a few other things up here. I got my gas line, slapped the heater hoses on, this vacuum line here. Just a few things up here, a few connectors. Put the connectors back in this box, and I'm just getting a few things up here. And so we're getting ready to get the radiator. I think I'm going to put it in next. I haven't done the connectors to the computer inside yet, but I've got the harness ran through there. So that's where I'm at, just getting ready. Put the radiator in. We're going to reconnect these. Okay, so just in here reconnecting our wires here and the ones under here to the computer. We got this connected up now. Okay, so I got the radiator back in. I got the hoses reconnected. I've double checked everything, the clamps. We got our wires routed, kind of just doing a check over. Transmission cooler lines connected, and just going along making sure I haven't missed anything at this point. And got a few connections up here that go to the breather box. I don't have that on here just yet. I'm fixing to start working on these CV axles, and then I'm going to go ahead and just start with the passenger side here first, and get it in there. Okay, so we just worked the passenger CV axle, hit it out here with a rubber mallet, knocked it back in, slid it into the knuckle, and I'm just loosely putting that on there, and then we're getting ready to pop this back into the strut here. Okay, so I'm just getting my rotor on here and getting this caliper, putting a little Loctite for this bracket for the brakes. And then once we get this tightened down, we'll go ahead and get the wheel on, finish torquing our axle nut here. Okay, so we just got the wheel on the other side. I'm just getting ready to put the CV axle over here on the drivers. Definitely, like I said, make sure to put transmission fluid on your seal so it's not dry going in with your CV axle. And I'm just going to stick it straight in here and then just hit it, tap it on the end with my heavy rubber mallet. Okay, so I'm just getting ready to put the breather box, and then we're going to get the battery and stuff back in, and we're going to put this shroud back on here, and we'll start getting some fluids in here. Start filling up the transmission. I'm not for sure how much it's going to need, because they drained a lot of it out. They didn't drain every bit of it out, so we're just going to have to fill it and check it and go from there. And we're going to get the coolant refilled as well. Okay, so I got as much coolant as I could get in for now. I've got my battery hooked up, and I'm just getting ready to start putting transmission fluid. I've got a gallon jug, and I know it's going to take at least that to start with, and then we're just going to have to start run it a little bit and see where we're at, and we're fixing to fire it up and test everything out and see how it's going to go here shortly. Okay, so I've got it cranked up here and just running it through the gears slowly, one at a time, getting the fluid circulating through here. And we're going to get it warmed up and try to get a good check on the fluid level and everything, and also going to be adding some coolant and stuff as needed, but it fired right up, no problem. Okay, I'm still steadily filling the transmission fluid. I'm letting it run through some more gears and warm up a little more, and also purging the air out over here. Okay, so we just got the fluids topped off and we're ready to go ahead and test it out and take it down the road. Done tested it up on the blocks and the reverse, and everything was working and engaging, and now we're just going to take it for a test drive. Okay, so took it for a test drive and it's running really good. I've got the fluid level for the transmission at the right level. It's shifting good and everything. So you know, it was a 2-day project, but everything went really smooth, and you know, it's working great now. So as I said, I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, give it a like and please share, and as always, I invite you to subscribe. Thank you for watching.